In the news this week, Premier Mark McGowan faces criticism for mishandling WA's regional crime wave as police voice frustrations over the issue. A WAMA News exclusive.
Female football players threatened to protest after 2 football teams were prevented from joining other leagues following the competition's collapse.
Here's no Mark McGowan, Prime Minister Scott Morrison's attack on opposition leader Anthony Albanese.
Peter Kennedy's assessment of independent candidates' agendas, plus Dr Andrew Miller's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loom and Maliva Thorne.
Good evening. Premier and Treasurer Mark McGowan is facing criticism over the recent crime wave in WA's north, with local MPs exclusively revealed that a senior police officer has publicly vented frustrations and criticised state government departments in an open forum. Despite Operational Regional Shield and youth crime prevention announcements, police are still picking up young children late at night over parental issues. Local MLC Neil Thompson is urging Mr McGowan to dramatically increase state budget funding to fight youth crimes. He joined me exclusively this week. Neil, thanks for your time. I know you've held several public forums on local crime matters, but what has not been talked about in the news is that a senior police officer vented frustrations at the Department of Communities. What's going on here?
Yeah, well, look, it's unprecedented, Ivan. It's unprecedented. I was in a meeting, and it was a meeting that was open to a wide range of participants, and we had the senior officer in the Kimberley openly criticised the department. Now, you know, fair enough. I mean, so he should have. The department, he picks up children. His officers, hardworking officers, pick up children late at night, unsupervised, and they have nowhere to go. These children, his officers then make calls to the Department of Communities hotline, the Child Protection hotline, and they get told on a message that they are open from the hours of 9 to 5. I mean, this is unacceptable. What we are seeing the results of incompetency by the state government when they rammed together the Department of Child Protection with the Department of Housing, and they called it the Department of Communities. They created this absolute, hybrid of an organisation which didn't know what it was about. We've seen multiple changes in leadership. We've seen corruption at that department. We need to see this agency, the Department of Communities, we need to see it be unpacked. We need to see a standalone Department of Child Protection re-established with a minister who can do the job, and with a new leadership which isn't so focused on taking punitive action against their own staff, but is actually focused on delivering outcomes for the children of the Kimberley, because it frustrates me to see the situation, it upsets me to see, and it upsets a lot of other people in the Kimberley to see young children with no future, no help, and no prospect of a future.
Is it extraordinary to see a cop having a go at the department like this?
Very unusual, and I can understand how the police feel. They've had to deal with it on the front line. Now, we saw Operational Regional Shield, a lot more extra police. Thank you. We got extra police after the community stood up and made a noise about this. The community spoke up. At Derby, we had 200 people at Derby speak up. We see our police getting that support that they needed to come and do the job that they had to do. But it's the other agencies that are failing to deliver. And the other agencies are led by incompetent ministers, and particularly the Child Protection Minister. And we need to see that change. This experiment to create this mega department, the Department of Communities, has failed. And I think that it's time the Premier accepted it has failed, accepted that, and reviews that situation and urgently creates a new department so that we have direct control with leadership locally as well, senior leadership, because it's only through leadership that we're going to get the results we need.
The government has made substantial announcements on Operational Regional Shield and youth crime prevention initiatives. With the state budget coming in days, what needs to happen?
Well, look, the government has announced over $40 million in initiatives for the juvenile justice situation in the Kimberley, and that's welcomed. Any funding is welcomed. However, the McGowan government has mishandled this situation terribly, and the people of the Kimberley have paid an enormous price and continue to pay an enormous price for the crime and dysfunction. And the young people of the Kimberley, the young children, those ones that are offending, are paying an enormous price for their futures and also just the whole pathway into incarceration and the terrible impacts that is associated with that. So I'm now saying to the McGowan government, Mark McGowan, the Premier, needs to hold his ministers to account. His ministers have failed so far. His ministers have not shown a strong interest in the Kimberley, and now they need to make good, and they need to take this funding and apply it in the right way and getting results quickly and urgently for our community.
Neil Thompson, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Owen. Thank you, watchers. Thank you.
Protests are on the cards after 2 Indigenous women's football teams were prevented from joining other competitions due to their local league collapse.
Players from Kungamia and Queen's Park clubs want to stay together against league suggestions of splitting them up. Indigenous advocates call the ordeal racial segregation.
Frustrated.
It's very sad.
Angry.
Yes, I think it is shameful that we have to go to this extent.
WA's Indigenous community, furious their women's football players won't be back on the field, denied the chance to continue playing together on their teams.
In terms of doing the right thing as human beings and as a community and inclusion into football. So
Kungamia and Queen's Park are left without an opportunity to play competitively after their 4-team competition folded because of low player numbers, affecting 60 Indigenous women. Their season was cut short after it began and they applied to join a different competition. They were rejected, the Perth Football League instead suggesting splitting up the players to join other clubs. Kungamia and Queen's Park say the sense of community and support among the players is keeping them together, and the women won't be playing if they're separated.
a flow-on effect of everything.
The league says they can play matches during bye rounds if other teams want to play them, but both clubs want to play for competition points. Indigenous advocates have slammed the Western Australian Football Commission at the treatment of their female players.
Racial segregation of our people, it's happened for far too long already, and we don't want this to be included in any sort of sports, and most definitely not women's sports.
They're planning protests to make sure they're heard by the football governing body.
We will rally out the front of our doors, because what we're talking about here is mental health and social values. Social values for our women.
They say they just want inclusion.
We don't want no tick-the-box scenarios. We want our people included, and especially our women.
Nelson Liu, WAMN News.
As Liberal and Labor continue to fight to win government, the independent candidates are stealing the show as voters share bipartisan fatigue. As the possibility of a hung parliament becomes more likely, questions have been raised over the independent candidates' agendas. Veteran political journalist and commentator Peter Kennedy's analysis of week 4 of the election campaign is here.
A feature of this federal election campaign is the role of independents and just what impact they will have in the final result on May the 21st. There are a new string of independents sponsored by businessman Simon Holmescourt, and they are mainly in key Liberal seats. And they are making climate a big issue, and also integrity in government. And the question mark over those independents, so-called independents, is just how independent they are. They're being sponsored by a group called Climate 200, and that is just a suggestion that they're not truly independent, or the question's been asked, are they truly independent? How independent are they? And if they are elected and the government is in the balance, a hung parliament, which side of politics will they support? Will they support the Liberal side, or will they support the Labor side to form government? They're the imponderables as the campaign goes into the final 3 weeks. Also, independents can pop up as sort of bogus independents, bogus parties to draw votes away from one side of politics or the other. That's not unheard of, and there could be some of those lurking in the shadows of this election campaign. Nothing wrong with it, but it means that voters are going to the polls without knowing the full details about some of the candidates, which is why voters need to be extremely cautious the way they cast their primary vote, but also the way they allocate their preferences. So plenty to think about as the election campaign goes into the final 2 weeks. And by the way, voting starts, pre-poll voting starts on Monday, May the 9th. Just a day or two after Scott Morrison launches the Liberal Party campaign. And that's when the major parties will hope that they've made their play and they've convinced voters to decide one side or the other. Time will tell. Peter Kennedy, WAMN News.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison has labelled opposition leader Anthony Albanese as weak, untested, unproven and unknown, saying he's no Mark McGowan. Arrived in Perth this week as the election campaign reaches the final 2 weeks, Mr Morrison attended the Leadership Matters luncheon, pitching his government to WA's elite. He attacked Mr Albanese's small target strategies, claiming they were signs of a small leader. The Prime Minister also visited a flight technology company inspecting innovative industries in Western Australia.
You can't hide behind someone else when you don't know the answers. You've got to know. You've got to sweat the small stuff to make those big calls. And we can't risk it with someone who thinks they can just make it up as they go along or make it up when they get there. Because the country depends on you knowing your stuff. So I've never subscribed to that small target strategy, because if you're a small target, the job's too big for you.
Homeowners are set to face a rise in mortgage repayments, as mortgage brokers claim a rise in the cash rate was expected to hit the housing industry. Mortgage brokers say it was just a matter of time that the rate increase would occur that would add to borrowers' payments. The Reserve Bank of Australia increased the cash rate by 25 basis points to sit at 0.35%. AA finance broker Leonard Nagar-Widjaja said the increase was anticipated and there could be further increases.
If there will be an increase on your mortgage repayment, so assuming that you have an average loan size of $100,000, your monthly repayment should go up by around $65 a month. It's always a great deal out there through various different lenders. I think do have a chat with your local finance broker and see if there is better options available for you. I mean, this is still, I think, the first increase of many. I still expect the next year or so probably is at least 2 to 3 different increases.
This week on the WAMN Extra News Club, a major leader in the Western Australian multicultural community has called for greater consultation of cowed communities by both sides of politics. CEO of Multicultural Services Centre of Western Australia, Ramdas Sankaran, believed there's a need for greater representation of people of colour in Parliament. Mr Sankaran also emphasised the importance of early voters and reminded major political parties not to forget to target them.
Look, I think both parties are forgetting the fact that, you know, in the last 2, 3, 4 elections, there's a trend towards people voting early. There is no point leaving all your good bits towards the end of the election campaign when a significant number of people have already voted and voted on the limited information that they had at that point in time. So my advice to all sides of politics is come, tell everything that you want to before postal voting starts, before, and then reinforce what you got to say in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
You can read all that and more on the WAMN Extra News Club. Subscribe via the link in the description and support independent local journalism.
Qantas's direct flight between Perth and London will be brought forward, the McGowan government has revealed. The airline's more direct route has been brought forward, with flights to begin on May 23rd, in what the government said would safely increase international arrivals from Europe and support economic diversification. Launched in 2018, the flight was the only non-stop service between Australia and the United Kingdom. It was also the first direct service between the two countries. The flight was temporarily rerouted due to COVID-19, but the return of the flight re-establishes Perth as Australia's western gateway to Europe, with flights operating in both directions, and the route is the most popular and profitable across the network. It complements the upcoming launch of Qantas's direct Perth to Rome service, which will operate 3 times per week.
The Multicultural E Carnival kicked off in Burstwood Park this weekend, bringing joy to the community. The annual event is back with some of Western Australia's favourite experiences, including camel rides, cultural performances and international food stalls for all attendees. Many parents brought their children along as the association celebrated the event's 18th anniversary. Many businesses also took the opportunity to showcase their products and services to the community.
So everyone loves camel rides, that's for sure. They're quite busy if you can't see them at the back, and they love the big ride machine. Everyone enjoy it too.
And what do you believe that this is a sign that things are looking up?
Well, we always hope so, and yeah, it looks like things go back to normal now. You know, such a big event like this, we didn't expect to have like that many people, but look, it's just the start of it now. We have over 3,000 people, so we're expecting more today because it's beautiful weather and the COVID restrictions are gone now, and I hope everything going to work well at the end.
Speak about riding camels, you can certainly do that in Broome, but you can do that this weekend in the E Carnival in Perth. Melly, what do you reckon?
It definitely sounds like a lot of fun.
Tempted?
It would be quite an adventure, I can imagine.
And speaking about adventures, coming up this week, WAMA News will be featuring a major interview with One Nation leader Pauline Hanson as the controversial Senate arrives in Western Australia. We'll be featuring the interview this coming Tuesday. We'll recap this week's top stories again in just a moment.
But right now, here's Nelson Liu with Western Perspective.
Thanks guys, hello and welcome to WP. Well, the 14-year-old journalist Leo Puglisi, who has regularly appeared on this broadcast, finally got to interview Labor leader Anthony Albanese after his feisty Q&A with the Prime Minister. With the election coming in less than 2 weeks, what's his assessment of both leaders when it comes to answering the questions properly? We spoke with Leo about his assessment with the Prime Minister and Opposition Leader.
Well, I think both were overly respectful. They weren't patronising, so I commend them both for that. Look, the Prime Minister seemed very defensive in terms of some of the questions we asked him, especially when it related to lies and falsehoods. Anthony Albanese a bit less so, but he didn't answer directly on a lot of questions, which is why Roman McKinnon and myself pushed back on him. We said, you know, it's a yes or no question, yes or no. And our Anthony Albanese also seemed to speak for a fair bit longer than the Prime Minister too. I think the PM came in at around 17 minutes, Anthony Albanese at about 25 minutes. But yeah, both, as I said, respectful, not patronising, and I fully commend the leaders of the two major parties for actually speaking to a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old in the middle of an election campaign.
So what do you think of Mr. Albanese's recent, you could say, gaffe when it comes to the NDIS policies of the opposition?
Look, it was interesting. It was interesting how a number of journalists handled it too, which I know caused a bit of controversy. Look, I'm not in the interest of constantly platforming gaffes day in, day out as our top story. There's something that also needs to be looked at, and while I also am not trying to do the gotcha journalism thing, it's also, you know, important that a leader would know this. I do know there was an interview with, I think it was a candidate, and this was back in like 2013, where he was asked what are the points and he just couldn't answer them. And I guess it was sort of a moment like that, but Anthony Albanese, he did eventually answer it, which was something, but the whole situation where you had multiple journalists almost yelling at him, it was quite odd to see, really.
Do you think it's impacted his chances of becoming Prime Minister?
Well, look, if it happened, you know, maybe a week before, I reckon there might be voters who change their mind on who to vote for. I know postal voting is about to start soon, so we should be cautious of that. I don't think people are going to look back at the two gaffes we've seen, NDIS and unemployment rate, and say this is what lost him the election. I don't think it's like a John Hewson, whatever his name is, birthday cake GST moment, but it's certainly something that I guess the Liberals are going to continue hammering him at. They have been going on social media continuously, the unemployment one, and I presume they will go at him over the NDIS one.
So who is your bet on winning this year's federal election?
It's a good question. It's a tough one. Look, I don't want to make a defining decision. However, I don't think there's going to be a landslide, and I would say either Liberals scrape in or there's a Labor minority. I think a Labor minority is more likely than a Labor majority, and in terms of individual things, I do predict there'll be a number of the so-called teal independents elected. Monique Ryan, I definitely think, will be elected in Kooyong, my seat, and then I also think there are a number of others, including Allegra Spender, who also have a strong chance. Zali Steggall, she's almost 100% certain to stay on with Catherine Deves, effectively not campaigning now, and teal independent. I think the crossbench is where it's going to be at, and and both parties are probably going to have to realise that, yes, we are going to have to, figure out who we're going to do a deal with, because even with the Prime Minister attacking the Teal independents, he won't rule out doing a deal with them, and I know Labor's been a bit less strong with their criticism of the Teal independents, if any. They're also not exactly ruling out a deal with them. I think they ruled out one with the Greens, but if working with the Greens stops them from forming governments, they'll work with the Greens, let's be honest.
Do you think that WA will play a major part in deciding who forms government?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because we know traditionally, and I know you're, as someone who lives in WA, a bit more of an expert, but Labor has definitely been a bit more dominant. We saw that in the 2019 election, Liberals still held on to their federal seats while Labor retained a lot of support on the state level. Now there is a lot more support for Labor on a state level now with the incredible victory for Mark McGowan last year, which just destroyed the Liberals in the state. I mean, the Nationals are now the opposition party. So I reckon, yeah, we could see a few Liberal losses there. I think Pearce, Christian Porter's old seat, is definitely something that could change hands to Labor. Of course, he's not running. But yeah, WA definitely, I reckon there will be a few seats there to watch, Pearce especially.
Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think people should really just watch these interviews to make up their own mind. And also, I do point out we also spoke to the Greens leader Adam Bant too, so they're all available. 6 News YouTube channel, search 6 News AU to find it.
And now, here's AMAWA spokesman Dr Andrew Miller with his weekly COVID-19 update and commentary.
Hi, thanks for your time and happy Mother's Day. Hope all your mums out there have been getting spoiled. Mine certainly has been. It's been a beautiful autumn day here in Perth. Unfortunately, we still are seeing a rise in cases across the country, about 35,000 in the last day in Australia, and this is putting an immense load on the healthcare workers. We have about 280 people in hospital in Western Australia, which is a big extra load, particularly because it slows down everything else, and this is at a time when the government are very keen to get back to reducing the wait lists, which of course have blown out during COVID shutdowns. And we just don't have the staff to be doing that right now. It's very, very difficult to get all of this done, and it's putting people under enormous stress. So, and including, of course, most importantly, the patients who've been waiting a long time to have essential elective surgery undertaken. So we're going to need a lot of love and care for our healthcare workers, and they should be getting better conditions than they are. See, the ANF has been coming out and saying that nurses want masks to be made mandatory again as soon as hospital numbers hit 300, and that seems like a wise thing to do to slow down the transmission of this virus. Wearing a mask in a shopping centre or when you duck in to other public places, it's not that difficult, as we all know. It's not really that big a burden, and we should be balancing where we are with people suffering disease and death against these simple kind of measures. Vaccination for children. Looking hopeful that we'll get that in the second half of this year, and we really want to avoid infections in kids. There's a question around hepatitis around the world now being caused by COVID in young children. Not answered yet. We don't know exactly what the cause is, but it's certainly one of the plausible reasons why we're suddenly seeing a rash of these around the world at the same time. But of course there's been huge numbers of COVID infections in unvaccinated kids, particularly under 5. So best to be alert, not alarmed, and to try to avoid ongoing infection. One of the schools in Perth, of course, suggested that they want to reduce staff illness, they want to reduce student illness by going back to masking in classrooms where people can't socially distance, and the Education Minister saying that that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, and of course it is. It's a sensible thing to do, and we're not going to be told by the government what to do so much anymore. We need to get on ourselves with the job, trying to avoid COVID infections when we can. Stay safe out there, look after one another. Thanks for your time.
And that's WP for this week. We'll be back again next time, but for now, it's back to you, Ivan and Melly.
Thanks, Nelson. And now, here's Connor with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks, guys. Tonight on 6 News, Anthony Albanese says he's open to a cabinet reshuffle if Labor wins the federal election, but adds that he thinks colleagues are worthy of their current roles. Plus, less than 2 weeks to go until Australians head to the polls with support for independents and minor party candidates going. But who will you be voting for? 6 News unveils a new viewer poll where you can have your say. And the mother who pushed for a royal commission into veteran suicide, Julianne Finney, explains why she's now running for the Senate in South Australia and slams the response she's received from the government. You can see full details on those stories and much more on our YouTube channel. Just search 6 News Australia to find us, or on our website 6newsau.com. For now though guys, it's back to you.
Thanks, Connor. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wamnnews.com.au.
Don't forget to subscribe to the WAMN Extra News Club so we can continue our work in the community. Full details on wamnnews.com.au/news/extra. From Melly and myself, wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.